this Pew Research paper or whatever says that Americans say the expectation to tip has spread to more places because you'll go somewhere and they'll be like, they'll already factor in the gratuity to it.
Well, yeah, enough. I've seen this a lot. So a lot of places now have that POS system that automatically puts it in front of your face.
Yeah,
right. I just like that.
You run your card or whatever, and it's like, here's the 10%, 15%, and 20% tip.
No, they have that at like grocery store where you're scanning and bagging your own shit. And then it's like, oh, would you like to add like 10 to 25% tip? Like, who?
Yeah.
For what?
Well, I mean, that is wildly.
Yeah. I think that's one of those things where it's like, and this gets into a deeper part of the conversation where we talk about actual, like, should tipping be the way that people get paid? Because, like, I've noticed this too. And, like, I like to leave, you know, if I like to go out and drink. You guys probably didn't know that. But, like, I like to go out to the bar. And I'll, like, when I go out, I leave, like, it's a minimum of 25% because tip your bartender. Yeah. And it's like, and routinely I'll leave, like, insane amounts of money, not just because I'm drunk, but because, like, that's my way of giving back to somebody who maybe can use it.
It's also,
like, I don't have any kids.
I have a floor, minimum 20%. Absolutely not a question. But, like, if I'm having a great time and, like, the atmosphere is great, the bartender is great, if we're talking about bartenders. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that what's happened is, because I've observed this too, and I'm like, I'll share with you my personal embarrassment that I inflict towards myself, but it's that, like, I like to always leave, like, an appropriate tip, you know, appropriate or more, right? I'll put it that way. And then, like, you go to a place where they give you, as you said, like this, you know, they turn the computer around and it's like, what percentage do you want to leave? And it's clearly it's a guilt thing. And that's an aspect, or a symptom rather, of the way in which this society, because tipping is so standard, that now you get a company that has basically taken advantage of that system. You know, so, like, it's one thing when it's just like you're at, like, I just came from, you guys know, I just came from a little bar in the woods, you know, and I always leave a good tip there. The owner is only making enough money off of the food so that he can pay his bills and live his life. And then the bartenders make their money off of that, right? It's a small little bar in the woods. You go to a larger establishment, you know, be it a Starbucks or whatever you want to call it, and now all of a sudden it's like implied that it's necessary to do so.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I'm like, well, listen, I understand exactly why I tip the bartender at this mom and pop bar, you know, the amount that I do, and I'm happy to do it. I'm proud to do it, to be quite honest. But then you go to, like, a Starbucks and it's made almost obligatory. And it makes people bitter about it because you do feel pressured. And, like, even myself, where it's like, again, I'm happy to sit here and pat myself on the back and be like, I leave 50% tips for bartenders because I'm a drunk, you know? But the truth of it is that even when I'm in those situations and they turn it around, it's like, you didn't do anything. So I'm not going to, like, I don't really want to leave you a tip because, like, as you said, you know, like, I rang myself. I didn't interact with another human.
Yeah, it's almost become full circle where it's like now tipping has become like this benchmark.
It's because, exactly.
You're you have to do such a shitty job not to get tipped.
Yeah. Now, I will say this, and this just occurred to me as you were saying that I use the example of Starbucks, where some people are a little bit doing the work, and I'm not trying to denigrate the work that people who work at Starbucks do, but it's that Starbucks doesn't pay them enough for the work that they do. So even though I'm saying that I didn't interact with anybody, so why should I leave a tip? They still had to do work for me to get the thing that I wanted, you know? So the tip is basically compensating for what Starbucks didn't pay them. And that's an abuse of basically of the cultural system that we have, where that tip is supposed to be for the bartender who works at a small place, you know, or whatever you quantify that.
I would say it's just a quick interjection. If you are going to tip cash if you can.
Oh
yeah.
Always tip cash because anything else is just kind of like no tipping. Really.
The whole, like, talking about the thing on, like, the POS thing where you have the screen and it's like the 10, 15, 20%. And it's like, what comes out of that and where does it actually go?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
you
exactly.
Know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't know if it's going to the person, and certainly the government is going to take a minimum of 20% of it.
It's documented, so they have to take something.
And let's be honest about it. If you're, you know, serving, you know, drinks, be them alcoholic or otherwise, or doing any number of these service things in the United States, you're not reporting these things. And the IRS knows that you're not reporting it. And we all basically turn a blind eye because this is how our society is able to function.
Right.
You know, if you make bartenders pay taxes on what they make, then nobody wants to be a bartender. Yeah. Because it's not a livable wage, you know?
And also, when it comes to like going to places like coffee places, I fully delineate between like a Starbucks and like an individually owned place, like our friend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like there is at Starbucks, it's more formulaic. There are ways to do things where I feel like there is, I guess, what you would call like an actual touch,
an art form
to
to making the coffee or whatever you're
most
getting
cases.
there. Yeah.
But like our friends that ran this
probably
this event.
Just do a shout out to the cafe.
Well,
I didn't know what the proper thing was to do.
Yeah,
so I was just like, you know,
probably to get props.
No. It's a fine establishment. I got the freaking orange cinnamon tea, and I enjoyed it. I spilled it immediately.
It sounds delicious.
And then that was really funny too, because as soon as I did that, I was just like, I had to go. I kept walking behind, like practically into the kitchen, and I was just like, I made a mess. Can I get us some paper towels?
We're saving all these insults for after.
But like, all right. So I brought up the data before, and Americans think that the expectation of where to tip has increased. So here's the actual numbers. According to Pew Research, 72% of Americans that participate in this poll, obviously, think that you're expected to tip in more places than you ought to.
Okay.
And then what is this? 23% is like about the same amount of places as, because what is the most Americans say expectations of tipping have spread to more places. Percentage of U.S. adults that say that tipping is expected in compared with 5 years ago.
I mean, I think that's because I see more of the POS system thing now, where it's like it puts it in front of your face.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, all right, well now, like, because you're using that with like a little tablet or something like that. Yeah. And you're just like, they do that in like supermarkets. Like, hey, do you want to like donate like $2 or the rest of your bill to contribute to like?
I want to comment on that. That's outside of tipping culture, but this is like something that like sticks in my craw, to use the old-fashioned verbiage. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. When you go to like a Wendy's and they're like, do you want to donate to this or to the supermarket? The bottom line about those things is that they're very often, not always, I won't talk shit about every corporation that does it, but a large percentage of the time, these things are, what they're doing is that you donate the money in theory to the thing. Yes. So you're saying, hey, ShopRite, yes, I would like to round up, or let's just call it $1 to make that easy. Yeah. Right. So I'd like to give $1 to this thing that you're, contributing money to. Right. So they take your $1 because you gave it to ShopRite. Right. So now ShopRite has your $1. Right. That hasn't gone to anything. No. And now they take that money, the percentage that they deem appropriate, and they donate that.
Yes.
And the way in which they do that legally is that you only need to donate 15% of the donation to the thing that you're doing for it to be legal in a, what is it, a 503? 503. Something like that. Yep. The government regulation for that. Yeah, so basically, when you give that $1 to a ShopRite, they take 85 cents of it and put it in their pocket because they have to process your payment.
It's for like their administrative processing.
Exactly.
Honestly, because that's fair because I steal more than that.
ShopRite is basically saying that because you burdened me with taking your $1,
you're making me do this for you.
It's going to cost me 85 cents to do this, so I'm going to give 15 cents to save children who have cancer, and the rest of it I need. And that's the end of the
for my troubles.
Help those children that have cancer.
Yeah. So my point about that would be never fucking do that.
No, I don't.
It's horrible.
But the point that I was making is that it kind of puts you on the spot.
It does.
Like, you don't want to give. It's purposeful. You don't want to give money to children with brain cancer. Right. What are you, an inhuman monster?
I've been called out on that because it was for juvenile diabetes, and it just so happened that I'm like, no, I don't want to give to that, and he's like, why? You don't care about people with juvenile diabetes? I'm like, listen, no, I don't. I'm one of them. Fuck those people. Fuck them right in their ass. I deserve to die.
You just met a man with a lot of self-hatred. You should not have opened up that can.
And then I stood there until the police came to escort me out.
That's your average Tuesday, huh?
It was a Tuesday.